she found it. The text gave her that much. The search, the lamp, the moment of recovery. 3 verses, no name. And then the parable moved on and she remained behind. What the coin was, what it cost her to lose it, even for a single night. Nobody went back to ask. That question starts here.
History kept the parable. History didn't keep the woman. What survived was the theology, the image of a searching God. Not the woman who spent hours in the dark of a one-room house, lamp in hand, looking for something that had her worth stitched into it. Not the woman who had to walk back into her village the next morning, headdress intact, and live inside what that search had revealed about her. First-century rural Galilee, a world where a woman's identity could be worn on her head and lost in a single careless moment. That woman is who we're here to find. Scripture preserves the event. It doesn't always preserve the person. This channel is built for the person, for what they carried, what they lost, what the days looked like after the miracle. Every video is rooted in historical and theological scholarship. Subscribe now and join us in finding what was left between the lines. And here's the part that no one has ever fully explained. What she carried back into that village after the neighbors went home. That is where this story begins.
Lord, I ask right now that you would open the eyes of understanding for every person hearing this. Let your word be a lamp, not just heard, but felt, not just received, but lived. May clarity come to what has been confused, and rest come to what has been restless. Let this moment be one they carry with them. In Jesus' name, amen.
Rejoice with me. I have found my lost coin. Those were the last words the text gave her. Luke's account ends exactly there. At the peak of celebration, neighbors pressing into the doorway of a small stone house, the lamp still burning low, relief flooding every corner of the room that had been dark and frantic just hours before. Jesus had made his point. The woman had served her purpose in the parable, but she was not a parable. She was a woman who still had to wake up the next morning. She would have been lying in the dark before the first light came through the single, narrow gap in the stone wall, the opening that served as a window in a house like hers, in a village in the rural Galilee of the late Second Temple period. The coin would have been back where it belonged, threaded onto the headdress cord, settled against the cloth with the 9 others. She could feel the weight of it before she reached for it. She knew it was there. And yet, something had shifted. Not in the headdress, in her. But here is the part that most readings of this passage walk past without stopping. What those 10 coins actually were, and what it meant in this village to lose even one of them for a single night. In first-century Jewish communities across Galilee and Judea, coins sewn onto a woman's headdress were not household savings. They were her mohar ornament, the visible portion of the bride price given by the groom's family at the time of betrothal and worn for the rest of her married life as a public declaration. Every neighbor who passed her at the well, every woman at the grinding stone, every elder at the gate read the same message. This woman is known. This woman's worth has been declared in silver. This woman belongs to a household that valued her enough to make that visible. Losing one of those coins was not a domestic accident. It was a fracture in the only language her community had for saying publicly who she was. The Greek word Luke uses for what she lost is apolemy. It carries more weight than the English word lost can hold. It means to perish, to be destroyed, to be gone in a way that feels irreversible, final, beyond recovery, until it isn't. It is the same word used across all three parables in Luke 15. The lost sheep, the lost son, the lost coin. Not a misplacement, something closer to annihilation. She had not mislaid a coin. She had lived, in those hours before she found it, inside something that felt like an ending. And anyone who has ever lost something that carried their name, their story, their claim to be seen as who they are, knows exactly what apolemy was describing. She lit the lamp. She swept the floor. And here is something the translation almost hides. The Greek word for her search is syro, not a gentle sweeping, a vigorous, methodical, corner-by-corner searching. The word carries the body bent low over a dirt floor in lamplight, hands moving through dust and silence, going over every surface a second time because the first pass was not enough. But here is what that search actually revealed. Not about the coin, but about her. She was not looking for a piece of silver. She was looking for proof that what she was had not slipped through the cracks of her own floor and vanished without anyone noticing. The syro, the desperate, systematic searching through the dark, was the body doing what the heart already understood, that some things, if lost, take the whole story with them. She found it. She called the neighbors. There was rejoicing, genuine and loud, in that small stone house. And then the text abandoned her, right at the moment when the real question was only beginning to form, because she had found the coin. But she had also seen something during those hours in the dark that could not be unseen. And what to do with that? That was not a parable. That was the rest of her life. The morning after the celebration would have looked ordinary from the outside. The same light filtering through the stone gap before the village fully woke. The same smell of fire and bread from the house next door. The same sounds. A child's voice, a door dragging over packed earth, somewhere the rhythmic knock of someone already at the grinding stone before the heat climbed. Nothing about that morning would have told a stranger that anything had changed. But she would have known, before she stepped across her threshold, that something was different. Not the coin. The coin was back. What was different was that her neighbors knew it had been gone. And in a first-century Galilean village, where the distance between houses was measured in feet, where walls were thin, where what happened in one household became part of the community's shared knowledge before the next morning's bread was done. That was not a small thing. She had been the one to open the door. That was what she carried out into that first morning, and the morning after that. She had called them in herself. She had said the words, "Come, rejoice with me. I have found it." She had been the one to make the finding public. But here is what witnessing a relief always does, what no amount of shared rejoicing can fully undo. To celebrate a finding is to confirm that there was a losing. Every woman who crossed her threshold that evening now held, somewhere in her memory, the image of what the headdress had been missing. Every neighbor who had smiled and said the right things now carried, quietly and permanently, the knowledge of what her face had looked like in the moment before the celebration. the face of someone whose public identity had briefly come undone. The concept of honor in her world, the Hebrew kavod, did not primarily describe an internal experience. Kavod means weight, substance, visible gravity. It was not the private feeling of self-respect that a person could carry inside themselves regardless of circumstance. It was the external, social reality of being seen and regarded by one's community as a person of standing. You either had visible kavod, maintained through the consistent presence of the right markers in the right places, or you did not. And kavod, once visibly questioned, did not simply reset when the marker was returned to its place. It required reconstruction, not dramatic reconstruction, not public atonement or formal repair, just the quiet, daily work of re-establishing through the ordinary texture of village life that what had appeared missing was now fully present and would remain so. She would have done that work. Every morning after, for some time, she would have done that work. But here is what no account of this parable ever follows into. What that reconstruction actually cost her, day by day, in the small and unavoidable interactions of an ordinary life. The woman at the well would have greeted her. She would have greeted back. Their eyes would have met for a beat longer than usual, not hostile, not condemning. Just the particular quality of awareness that passes between two people who have seen something real in each other. Something unguarded, something that was not meant to be shared, but was shared, and now existed between them as a quiet, permanent fact. There is a specific weight to being known in that way. It does not always feel like burden. Sometimes it feels like something closer to relief. The relief of having been seen at your most exposed and not being diminished by it. But you have to learn to feel it as relief. And learning takes time and requires that the people who saw you choose to stay. The tension in this story is not the losing. The tension is what the losing revealed. Because the losing had an end. It was terrible. The particular terror of something that felt like a polemy, like an ending, but it resolved. She searched, she found, she called the neighbors. The coins were back in their place. The external crisis was over. What did not have a clean resolution was the question the crisis had opened. In the social economy that governed first-century Palestinian life, the headdress was not a private object. It was a public record, worn every day, read by everyone who passed her on the road, never updated and never revised. The 10 coins declared a fixed story about who she was and where she stood. And a fixed story, by definition, could not absorb visible disruption without cost. The disruption had happened. The coins were back. But the story, the one her village told about her and the one she told about herself, now had a night in it that the official version of the headdress could not fully account for. And here is the part of this story that no commentary has ever stayed with long enough. What it costs a person, day by day, to live inside a story about themselves that everyone around them briefly saw challenged. Not because her neighbors were unkind. They had come when she called. They had rejoiced with her. They were her philas, women who knew her well enough to understand what the coin represented and who had shown up without hesitation. That was real. That mattered. But here is what even the kindest witnesses carry. memory. Memory of the moment before the finding. Memory of what her face looked like when she opened the door. Relief visible, which means the fear that preceded it was also visible. You cannot celebrate someone through the far side of a crisis without becoming a permanent witness to the fact that the crisis happened. And she had to live next door to those witnesses every day after. There was a second kind of tension, deeper than the first, and it had nothing to do with what her neighbors knew. It had everything to do with what she now knew about herself. She had spent hours in the dark of her own house, searching with the desperation of someone who understood, in their body, exactly how much of their sense of self was held together by 10 pieces of silver on a cord. That was not a comfortable discovery. That kind of self-knowledge does not arrive gently. It arrives on the floor, in the dark, through the hands. The silence in this story is a universal one. Most of us carry something that the people closest to us don't fully understand. Something that happened that left a mark the world didn't see. If any part of this story touched something like that in you, the comments are a space to say so. She found the coin. But the reckoning did not end with the finding. It changed form. Because the question was no longer whether the coin could be lost. She knew now that it could. She had felt what the losing meant. And the coin back on its cord did not erase that knowledge. It coexisted with it, existed. And here is where the real conflict of this story lives. Not in the night she searched, but in every morning after, when she reached for the headdress and had to decide again what she believed about herself now that she knew what the losing felt like. The turning point did not come in a single moment. It came the way most real shifts do, gradually through the accumulation of ordinary days that each added something small to a change the person could not name while it was happening. She continued to go to the well. She continued to grind grain. She continued to pass the same women on the same roads, exchange the same greetings, move through the same rhythms that had structured her life before the coin was lost. But something was different about how she moved through those rhythms now. The difference was the women who had come. In the days and weeks after the celebration, she had watched how her Phyllis, her chosen neighbors, the women who had crossed her threshold that evening, treated what they had witnessed. And what they had done with it was not what the social economy of honor would have predicted. They had not weaponized it. They had not placed it carefully in the ledger of social knowledge that could be withdrawn at the moment it was most useful. They had not treated her moment of exposure as a debt she owed them. They had celebrated with her. And then they had returned to ordinary life. And in their ordinary treatment of her, in the way they greeted her across the street and handed bread over the low wall without any particular weight in their eyes, they had given her something that the headdress, for all its visible silver, could never give. They had shown her that she was known in a way that was not contingent on the coins remaining in place. But here is what happens to a person when they discover that kind of knowing is available to them. It does not immediately dissolve the fear of the gap in the headdress, of the social vulnerability of what the village might see, does not simply vanish because friends came when called. Fear that has lived in the body does not evaporate on the strength of evidence. It recedes. It changes its relationship to the person carrying it. It moves from the foreground to the background. And in the background, it becomes something different, not an emergency, but a reminder. A reminder that what she had assumed was her stable identity, 10 coins, a public declaration, the visible language of worth, was not the deepest layer of who she was. That beneath it, something else had been there all along, and the Philas who came had pointed to it without knowing they were pointing. And here is where the theology of this story breaks through the surface of the narrative without ever announcing itself. Because Jesus used her in a story told to Pharisees and tax collectors on a day she almost certainly did not witness, as the image of God's own searching. He pointed to her desperate sorrow through the dark, hands pressed into the dirt floor, lamp swinging through corners she had never examined before, and said, "That is what heaven looks like when it moves toward what was lost." She never knew this. She searched for her coin, and a rabbi used her search as a picture of divine love, and the story moved on. But here is what stays with you. She did not need to know. She had been seen that way for the truth of it to be operating in her life. The same searching that tore something open in her, the same apolemi she had lived inside, was being held in the telling of a man she may never have met, as an image of the way God moves toward the one who is lost. Her searching was not just her searching. It never had been. What remained after all of it was not a different woman. That is the honest thing to say here, and it is also the thing that most versions of this kind of story resist saying. The expectation built into the structure of parable, built into the way we tell stories about moments of grace, is that afterwards things are transformed. The person is changed. The fear is gone. The coin is not just found, but its finding brings permanent peace. She was the same woman, living in the same village, wearing the same headdress, but she had been through something that left a mark. Not only a wound, a kind of knowing that operates differently than the knowledge you acquire without cost. She knew now that the coin could be lost. She knew what that felt like in her body, in the specific hours of lamplight and dirt and silence. She knew how deep the fear had reached, how much of what she thought was herself had been held together by 10 pieces of silver on a cord. And she knew that within the structure that could threaten her, there was also something that could hold her. The Philas who came, the neighbors who witnessed and did not condemn, the community that turned out to carry more weight than the coins had told her it could. But here is what doesn't resolve cleanly, and why that is the most honest thing about this story. The headdress was still the headdress. The social economy of honor was still exactly what it had been before the coin was lost. The coins still had to be in their place each morning. The village still read her worth in what she wore. None of that changed. What changed was her relationship to the question of whether the coins defined her, not her relationship to the coins themselves. The coins still mattered in the world she lived in, and always would. But the question of whether they constituted her, whether their presence or absence determined who she was at the level below the headdress, that question had been pried open in the dark, and it was not fully closed again. It was transformed into something she now carried with more awareness than before. Not all awareness is peace. Some of it is simply honesty. And honesty, lived with over time, can become something that resembles peace, without ever pretending to be certainty. And here is the part of this resolution that most resembles the human experience of recovering from loss. The finding of the coin did not erase the finding of the fear. What had been revealed in those hours of searching about the depth of her need for the markers her world used to name her, about the fragility of the identity she wore publicly, that knowledge did not disappear. It settled. It became something she carried in her body, integrated into her understanding of herself. No longer an emergency, but present. The most honest resolutions do not close the question. They change the person's capacity to hold it open without being destroyed by it. She held it. Every morning, reaching for the headdress before the light came, she held it. And something in the holding was different now from what it had been before the night of the searching. Not because the external circumstances had changed, because she had been to the floor of her own house in the dark, and she had found what she was looking for, and she had been witnessed by the people she called, and she had survived all three of those things. That kind of survival changes what you believe is possible, and that is, perhaps, as much resolution as the human story usually gets. There is a specific kind of fear that almost no one names out loud. Not the fear of something happening, the fear of losing the thing that tells the world and tells you who you are. Not your health, not your finances, not even someone you love. The thing that carries your identity in the language other people use to understand you. The thing that, if it disappeared, would leave you wondering whether you were still who you thought you were. Most of us have one of those things. Maybe it's the career that defined you for 20 years, the title that answered the question before anyone had to ask it. Maybe it's the relationship that proved you were worth staying for. The one whose continued presence is the evidence you point to when the internal jury is still out. Maybe it's the role in the family, the capable one, the one who holds it together, that you have worn so long it stopped feeling like a role and started feeling like a self. Maybe you are carrying something right now that you once nearly lost and found, and have never quite been able to put down since, because now you know what the losing felt like. That is not weakness. That is the weight of anyone who has poured themselves into something real enough to lose. This story arrived at you today. Of all the videos that could have appeared, this one, about a woman who spent a night in the dark on the floor of her own house, searching for the thing that declared her worth to the world she lived in. Maybe that is not a coincidence, because the word that preserved her 3 verses also preserved something written centuries before her search. Isaiah 43:1. Do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have summoned you by name. You are mine. The key word in the original Hebrew is kara. It doesn't mean simply called, it means named. In the ancient world, to name someone was not an act of labeling, it was an act of creation. To be called by name by the one who made you meant that your identity was established somewhere that no coin on any cord could reach, and no loss on any floor could take. She searched for the coin that carried her name in the language her village spoke. And the word says, there is a name spoken over you by a voice that does not depend on what your neighbors see. That name was there before the headdress. It will be there after. If that lands on something you are carrying, you don't need to resolve it today. You don't need to have the answer. You don't need to know yet what identity looks like when the coins are gone. There are more silences like this one waiting to be explored. More people whose stories were preserved only in outline. and whose full humanity is still there, inside the gaps, waiting for someone to look. Subscribe and come with us.
3 verses, no name. The text used her to show us the heart of God, and then moved on without looking back. What it meant to be her the next morning and every morning after was never considered a subject worth recording. That absence is its own kind of statement. If something you heard today stayed with you, if it brought something to the surface that you've been carrying for a long time, leave it in the comments. You don't have to carry it alone. Sometimes the thing that changes us is not the finding. It's the moment we realize that someone came when we called. Whatever you are carrying right now, there may be more witnesses available to you than you think. God bless you.